Around me, I felt a crowding in of beings, as if the Celtic fairy land of Fae had become momentarily co-present with where I was. I sensed them, but did not experience these creatures. The sucking experience took over for a while then, driving the morphological acrobatics of space love that lay before me. There was something about it that makes me think of a voluptuous alien seductress with big, fat lips pulling me to her body in the weirdest feeling embrace ever. It felt like I was being smeared sensually and lustfully around the space in some sort of vacuum tube funhouse. At this point, maybe a minute into the experience, I started picking up something like the Escher painting of all those sets of stairs with figures descending by all manners of gravity. Only its surfaces were emerald isles of what I can only describe as fractal Medusa liquid, serpentine and sexy. Yes, serpentine and sexy, like a dance of endless possibilities. There was a thought that I was in a room full of aliens and they were playing with me, but that somehow they had conspired to make me this way. The Alien Carney music bar on the planet Tatooine in the Star Wars trilogy seems relevant. Then I had the thought, which just seems to pop up and not really pertain. What have I done? How did I get this way? Meaning, how did I come to enter something so foreign that my petty human ontological premises and hopeful body of knowledge seem like a wrench trying to adjust a camel? At that point, I lost any touch with my body and was thrust forward into complete and utter amazement. The world became so crammed full of intricacy to the nth that it seemed every nook and cranny in my space-time was exfoliating little crystalline dancing worlds, bellowing ecstasy. It moved like snakes move, all rippling of muscle and sun-glinting scales. I cannot emphasize enough the catapulting titanic motions of this iridescent zigzag bottle rocket, this nuanced whittling circus of form, this Brobdingnagian roller coaster safari across the jeweled plains of Wonderland, straining the limits of the knowable. This is where I was when I felt a certain sort of shockwave across the dome of the sky which gave me memory of the real world. I then entered this whole journey that I would call extrication. Going in was intrication or delving into intricacy, so coming back out was sensibly extrication. The experience was very literally an incredible groping back out of this wild woolly thing until I made it out, which afterwards I realized was only the physical action of opening my eyes. The pipe was in my mouth. Its touching my lips had been the reality shockwave I'd felt. The woman who was handling the pipe for me looked like a fractal Medusa as well, but incarnate. She was buzzing all over with this really freaky energy. I said something like, "You expect me to call this a mouth?" A comment which was silenced by the stem of the pipe. One token, I was out of my body again, yanked back through the scrim of the worlds into the blast furnaces of heaven. I came to, in some sense, at this point, and realized that I could do anything in a space like this, could instantly unfold my richest possible imaginings. Okay, I said to myself, what about trying to do what you believe possible by your perceptual theory of higher dimensional experience? You see, I got the idea that there is no reason why, in an inner experience, one has to have visions only in front of one. I began to believe this was an imprint that years of bringing the external world into construction of inner spaces had created, but was not necessary. I then tried to imagine what it would be like to see in every direction at once. That is, what would a ball look like if you could see every side of it at once? I could sense it, but not imagine it in my mind. So this is the challenge I set myself. It not only seemed to work, though with everything else going on inside, it was a bit like trying to do a sensitive physics experiment in the midst of a drunken bacchanal, but it did so immediately. I rushed upwards into this superspace that was a spun galactic ecology of stars, a swarming hive of dragonfly constellations. This was very profound, but in doing it, it seemed I had reduced the alien quality of what had been going on previous to this excursion. I let my will go then and tumbled forward into Elfland, Terence McKenna is apt in calling these entities elves. They are elves/not elves. They don't appear. They kind of ooze out of the woodwork seductively, and before you know it, they're there. The whole realm is infested with these creatures like nothing else you could ever imagine. They do sing things that are like self-dribbling jeweled basketballs or whatever you want to call them. They make Fabergé egg concoctions with ingredient lists like 1. Space, 2. Lust, 3. Politics, 4. Circus sideshows, 5. Time, 6. Gallbladders, 7. Existential notions of polyfidelity, 8. Cucumbers, 9. Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, 10. The smell of petunias, and so on.
This is somewhat of an arbitrary list, but the point is, all my categories of mind fell away because they were being ceaselessly synthesized and resynthesized into these hyperdimensional objects, undulating, ululating along.
It makes me think of getting home from school when your mother says that she's baked you some treats, only these are like no treats Mom ever made, and when you see them you almost want to say, "Oh, Mom, you shouldn't have." I mean, you really shouldn't have. What you do with these elves is some sort of a game of catch, only the physics of the game has been replaced by the physics of synesthesia. In catching the things they threw, in playing with them, I participated in the ineffable mysteries that they were. This place is the Joycean merry-go-round. Being there, I came to understand the Heraclitus fragment. The Eon is a child at play with coloured balls. It is this. As well I understand, still the first day, All Fool's Day, here at the centre. It is this too. So for what seemed like centuries, I played with the trippy, freaky elves, and they kept bringing me into atrium after atrium in the Antics Annex, and all I could do was wonder when we would get to their front door. At first they said, build this, indicating hyperspace. Later they amended this by saying, build it, he will come, from the movie Field of Dreams. Very funny. Then it was as though alarms started to go off and the whole space was going through these quivering emergency elaborations. I get the image of a submarine movie sequence when I think back on this. Just when it has been discovered on the surface, the periscope retracts and the whole interior goes into haywire, preparatory gymnastics as all the hatches are battened down. There is a phenomenally high energy dynamic associated with this part as they try to get you out and shut the great bronze dancing doors of hyperspace. It is as if everything is charged with imponderable electricities and is racing around because someone shouted, "Places, everyone!" They start cramming your soul out of there with a million hands at once, grabbing you by 12 dimensions you never knew your body had. Finally, the thing shuts and there's a sense of finality to that, but just as soon you're on to the next thing.